Welcome to the acclaimed podcast, The Deep Dive, featuring your esteemed hosts, Andy Monitor and Drew Dinzik, powered by BETSPERTS.
Welcome to The Deep Dive. Andy, how you doing today?
Still just doing great down in a basement in Georgia, recording. This is how I chose to spend my past anniversary this year. It's been fine though, and like I said, I was kind of down because of some of the, it's not the best golf tournament this weekend, but we do have some good stuff. Yes, my Jackrabbits are in the national title game this fall or this weekend, so there's some good sports this weekend. I think I could bet on some few things, and I have.
We got NFL schedule release going on today.
Yeah, the leaks is just funny. Like, oh, we're releasing tonight at 6. Like, yeah, we already saw it. It was on Twitter.
Yeah.
We know what you're saying.
I'm watching my net worth take a 20% haircut in a matter of minutes. Just a great Wednesday. But we're not here to talk about NFL. We're not here to talk about anything other than the state of the industry in our annual tradition, welcoming back great friend of the pod, Captain Jack Andrews, to give us a decent understanding, a decent perspective on how the overall space is evolving now that we are 3 years past the dissolution of what was the firewall between allowing states to pass legal gaming laws for sports betting. Captain Jack, welcome back to the Deep Dive.
Thank you, guys. Happy past anniversary, everyone. Well, 2 days early right now, but on Friday, man, we're celebrating big time.
Yeah, and so far these have been wild. We had you on for year one, and at that point, it was literally like, wow,
what's going to happen?
Anything. Yeah, the sky is the limit. How soon are we going to have it in California and New York? Like this. We could go. Anything is possible. Year two, it was literally in the midst of the pandemic. Are we ever going to have sports again? And then here we are in year 3, and all of a sudden, sports books are scooping up media companies for 9-figure buys. The
for
states.
You
personally are for sale. Wow.
Write the check.
9 figures starting at 9 figures. Bidding starting at 9 figures. I'll take a discounted rate at this point. Watching the market. No, but it's the momentum of people who are just kind of it's the gold rush is on. There is so much. There's been a massive shift in just the way the media is covering gambling. Like it is crazy how much things have changed in just 3 years. I work for NBC now.
We should, and I was going to say we should have done some guesses last year, and maybe we'll do it. We'll do a segment where we do some guesses this year, because I think if we would have done like a guess, like what do you think a real big topic will be? Like, what do you think one of the bigger topics will be in the sports betting media space next year? And I wouldn't have said like, the one random asshole that wins the same game parlay that night. Like that's every day. Every day I have to see that. Like we've seen it. Like we get it. Those happen sometimes. Like I wouldn't have guessed that would have been my major annoyance. But yeah, we'll have to take some wild guesses, because like I said this off air, and I'll repeat it. These guys can listen again. I sat down this morning. I was up early. I grabbed a coffee and I listened to the first 20 minutes of the second anniversary, past anniversary, what have you. And at this point last year, like Drew just said, we were depressed. It had a very morose tone. We were not knowing. We just come off the draft. We had no sports. If you remember where baseball was, the players union and the league, they were fighting. There wasn't looking like there was going to be much of a solution there. We talked about what would we give up to have baseball. We asked Jack if he would be okay with the DH in the NL, because he's a purist. He said, I'd settle for 5-inning games. He said, I would take whatever. And lo and behold, they did change a bunch about that. We ended up obviously with the bubble. We ended up with the double bubble up in Canada for hockey. And it's funny, our main prediction was, we all agreed the NFL will figure it out. Like they don't give a shit. They'll have a season, right? They're not going to let that money go out the window, and kind of nailed that one. So hopefully this is just a nice a nice smooth year. We don't have to make any wild predictions about the future of sports, and we can focus on the future of sports gambling in the industry.
Yeah. So with that context, Captain Jack, as you look back over the 3 years since this has been a thing, have things gone as you would have predicted, or are we kind of overshooting your expectations or underperforming?
Well, actually, I listened to a podcast that I did back in, it was like the early fall of 2018. And at the time, I was saying, look, yeah, we have 5 or 6 sports books right now, but they're going to start buying each other. And we're only going to have 2 or 3, and that's going to be it. That didn't pan out. We have, if in states that allow it, we have very diverse competitive industries, which is great. As a sports bettor, man, having more outs is more better. And there's a lot of states that get it. And we've got some great environments for sports bettors out there. But that whole consolidation thing didn't happen. And it actually still hasn't happened. We know there's some of these sports books out there that are really small and struggling, and they haven't been swallowed up by other ones. I'm not quite really sure why that is. But I don't want to say that we'll see it happen in the future. But this whole acquisition of media and then acquisition of like the full stack. So in other words, you get a DFS company, you get a media company, streaming company, you get a broadcast platform, you get a sports book, front end and back end software, and you kind of build your whole stack out. That's been a trend lately in the past year that we didn't see coming as much a couple years ago. But for the most part, I would say sports betting today is not bad in the United States. If you would have told me 3 years ago this is what it was going to be like, what it is now, I would have been like, okay, I can work with that, and and I have.
Yeah.
Do you think it's, and we talked a little off air about the varying levels where states are. The states that are, all right, we have competition, we have online sign up, we have basically the best of what the U.S. offers at this point. And then we have Montana, we have Oregon, we have an absolute monopoly by the DC, the lottery run, the monopoly stuff. I guess, actually, I was going to just say that's better than nothing. I'm not 100% sure that's an accurate statement. It's probably the same as nothing. Like it's a step in the right direction that we're legalizing. Hopefully those moves turn into lessons learned and not the way other states do it. But I guess where we sit here, where all the states are at various levels, like, do you think it moved faster or slower as far as which states are legal? And, take into account that the states that have legislation right now that are probably going to make a move in the next 18 months as well. Because I didn't think it would go quite this fast.
Right. The funny thing is Roxy Roxborough had a quote in 2018, right after legalization, before really any states were doing anything. And he said, it's a good thing we're letting New Jersey go first because they seem to be the most ready for all of this. They've kind of weighed all the options out into the best way to approach it. And he said, but will everybody follow New Jersey's lead, or will they try to do it their own way? We saw the latter. Everybody tried to do it their own way. Mm-hmm. Even though they were coming in with $1 billion of handle in a month for a state with 9 million people. These other states were going, but you know what? I think we can probably do it this way. And we'll in-person signups, or you can only do this if you're actually in the casino. And look, there's finally now, 3 years later, the states that are coming on board now are getting it right from the start. Arizona is a good example. Arizona has tribal gaming and they have commercial casinos. Those two factions never really agree with each other too well. Arizona's gone ahead and they've said, okay, well, the commercial casinos get this, the tribal casinos get this, and you know what? The sports teams get this. And you guys can fight it out, be competitive in this market. It's a flat level playing field for everyone. And Arizona could be really good.
Capitalism.
Virginia, here's a state that didn't have any casinos, but they're going to get casinos. And so they built this in from the start, and they said, okay, if you have a casino, you get a license. If you have a sports team, you get a license. So there's not this kind of this lobbying going on to make it just for my group, just for my cottage industry. Tennessee is a good example. There's no gaming in the state outside the lottery, and the lottery runs things, which can sometimes be shaky. But they said, okay, we're all mobile all the time. You don't have to go anywhere to sign up because we don't have anywhere for you to go. So we're going to have this mobile betting platform, and everybody can have at it. And it's been a competitive state. Maine is another example. They're going to legalize soon. Small state, but they're going to take the approach of if you have a license in any other state, if you're licensed in any other state, you've got a license in Maine. They're kind of taking themselves out of the whole regulation thing. Like if you're good enough there, you're good enough here. And as a result, they're going to have a very competitive industry.
Is that like real soon? Like before my vacation to Maine this summer?
Andy's ready to move to Maine.
Probably not until the fall.
Oh, it'll be like the day after I leave. Oh, it's been exciting, like traveling through a legal state. Again, Drew and I are stuck in liberal. We're in liberal states who are just kind of behind on how this is working, and I think a big part of that, and maybe you can speak to that because Arizona is a good example of running into that problem, having it right. Have you seen that with some of the states that are, they have the infrastructure, but it's all tribal. It's tribal-owned casinos, and a lot of them, I think, view this as competition rather than a complement to what they're already offering. I mean, is that something I'm going to be able to see get overcome here in Minnesota or some of these states that run into that?
So Minnesota is going to be interesting because you have racinos, you have tribal casinos. They need to come up with a plan that kind of treats both of them equal-handedly. That's sometimes a problem. The problem we see is a lot of casino ownership, whether that be tribal ownership or commercial casinos. They tend to think that sports betting is an amenity. It's a complement to the rest of their gaming. It's something they use to get people in the door.
Sure.
Therefore, we want them to have to come through our casino at some point, whether it be to sign up or whether it be to make bets. And they just get stuck in that mindset of thinking. When in fact, sports betting, the way it's done in recent years, is gaming unto itself. And a lot of these casino companies have yet to kind of catch on to that. That's why they outsource a lot of this. We have very few casino brands that have their own sports betting vertical. And it's because they feel like it's safer to just outsource this, let somebody else handle this low margin, risky environment that seems to require 24/7 attention. So as a result, some of these casinos are kind of backwards thinking. And if you don't have the casinos all on board with this, then the lobbying is kind of fractured in your individual state. Now, Drew's out there in California, and that's just a whole other ball of wax. There's over 50 tribes there in California that have casinos. So even if they just make it available to the tribal casinos, it could be a competitive market. But we're going to see out there what we saw in Florida to some extent. Is mobile gaming from tribal casinos legal under the Internet Gaming Regulation Act? Nobody's really pressed this issue yet to see if it is. So I think California is waiting to see what Florida does with their compact with the Seminole tribe. And then that could kind of move things forward in California going forward. But the other problem with California is on top of those tribal casinos, you have the card rooms, which have always been this kind of pseudo gambling out there in California. And then you have the racetracks, and they're going to want a piece. And then you have the sports teams, and you have a ton of sports teams, and they're going to want a piece. California is a big enough economy. They could support all of it. It could be a wide open sports betting economy and it would work. But there's too many people that have their hands in the pot that want to say it's all for me. And that's going to slow things down in California for years to come.
Yeah. I mean, that's the same exact problem that prevented the high-speed rail from really succeeding, to be honest.
But early in that point, you talked about like treating it as an amenity. And you've seen, I mean, some of the Vegas casinos, like what it takes to get to the book. You have to walk like, I might play some blackjack. Like treat it like something that's going to draw someone through the casino. It reminds me of that Spanky had, I think it was Scotty Shetler. And he talked about at one point he was going to put a sports book on either end of this casino and have different prices and make people walk back and forth through the casino, which is the most hilarious thing. But like it probably would have worked, as dumb as that was. Like people would have done that and stopped and played craps. But like, yeah, treat it like I can't imagine how many of just from my personal experience, how many buddies would go an extra trip to the casino on the weekend if there was also a sports book during college football. Like now those buddies, instead of going to Treasure Island or going to Mystic Lake near the Twin Cities, they go down to Iowa because it's about the same distance and there's a FanDuel book down there, right in the casino, and there's dice. So I mean, you're just kind of cutting your own throats at this point if you're not doing it, especially if there's a neighboring state.
Yeah, is some of the issue they're concerned like they don't want to like if all of a sudden if you can play blackjack on your phone, why you're never coming back? Is that some of that? And honestly, and actually, let me ask you a two-part question. Is some of it like they're worried about the competition of the stuff that's making revenue for them, and the fact that we are kind of coming out of this pandemic and they've been really under a lot of pressure because tourism has been just completely throttled? Does that give legislatures any more leverage against them, or is that like now they are intractable in their unwillingness to cede ground because they're backed against the wall?
I think the casino lobby will use whatever angle they can possibly think of in order to make their case. It's a very strong lobby. In states that have tribal gaming, tribal lobby is very strong. We've seen that in a couple of these states where it's almost like they're in the pocket. Here's the thing that all of these sports betting companies want, and we're going to skip ahead slightly in the evolution of sports betting here. What we've seen with sports betting is these companies are willing to lose money. DraftKings, FanDuel, they're spending $200 billion a quarter just on marketing. They're not making $200 million a quarter, not a billion. On marketing, they're not making nearly that much in gross gaming revenue. They're running sports betting at a loss. And why are they doing that? Is because they know the next evolutionary step here is iCasino, internet casino gaming.
Yeah.
That's where they all want to go. They all want to be an internet casino company instead of being an internet sports book.
Sure.
And as a result, it's almost like a Trojan horse walking in. The Trojan horse is like, hey, we're giving you sports betting. This is what all your people want. Here it is. Inside that Trojan horse, open it up. It's in an internet casino, and they're just ready to come play the slots.
I got the distinct feeling about the way that DK operated in New Jersey, and somewhat during the pandemic, it was like you couldn't avoid the hey. By the way, you want to play some blackjack? Come on over and play a little blackjack.
Exactly, exactly. And the thing is, the margins there are sometimes less than sports betting, but the volume is so much greater. In other words, you can make one sports bet an hour. You can make 80, 90, 100 blackjack bets in an hour. Yeah. So there's just so much more way to cycle through the money and just slowly drain it out of people's wallets.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. Okay. Have you heard, or do you have the feeling that we will ever get to the point where these companies are mature enough financially and powerful enough as far as industry-wide goes that they can put federal pressure to get some sort of legislature that provides some guidelines so that this really does become all 50 states at one point? Or is this like, hey man, states are going to do what they're going to do. We're not even going to try to touch that third rail. We'll just figure out a way to weasel our way into every market that we can.
So gambling has always been a state issue. For as long as the United States has had legal gambling or talked of legal gambling, it's always been a state-by-state issue. And I think there's a lot of people in the federal government that recognize that and want to keep it that way. However, I think there will be a lobby coming from the gaming companies that want to first eradicate the Wire Act, because that's really been a block here to larger liquidity. And with larger liquidity comes a little bit more certainty for gaming profits. If it's spread across, far more many bettors, then there's less chance of variance in affecting outcomes and things like that. So there's going to be a push to get rid of the Wire Act, and that might lead some lawmakers to then say, okay, well, we need a federal framework, and we're not going to touch how states handle gaming. We're just going to make sure that nobody goes out crazy, nobody goes off the rails crazy and tries to come up with a system that is harmful to citizens in general. So I think that's where we're going to go with. And here's the thing, Drew. These sort of gaming regulations and things like this that are sort of less palatable for re-election concerns, they tend to come up in only certain years, usually the third year of a presidential cycle. So 2023 is probably the time when something like that's going to happen.
Yeah, and we're dealing with a weird kind of moral situation for whatever reason with a bunch of the stuff with our current administration. So maybe not get my hopes up.
Yeah, not only the big thing when I hear Wire Act repeal is like, and the liquidities, a nationwide exchange, which is the ultimate wet dream for all of us, I suppose. But even again, something we just talked about. I joked we should have just started recording 8 minutes early because I'll just tell the same story again. When I was in Detroit, I had to uninstall and reinstall my DraftKings app to get a different app. I had to get the Michigan app instead of the Iowa app. And I think a lot of that is just when we're doing this state by state here, there's all this legislation from states, and you end up with these different, it's the same app, and you have it, there's no continuity between that. Even with, we have the WinBet sponsorship. I have 3 different links to sign up. There should, I should be able to have one link to sign up for WinBet, but you got to click a different link based on what state you'd like to sign up for. And I mean, that's the case with a lot of these things. It's silly. And I think that would be a very nice, what's the opposite of a casualty? Like a bonus if we do end up getting away from the Wire Act, which is probably antiquated at this point, I would think.
Oh, sure. I mean, in 1991.
I even look at the PASPA, it's like, 1992, Jesus. Like, the Blue Jays were winning, and then, and then you look how old the Wire Act, it's like, Christ. This is back. This is way back.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. That wasn't really a question. That was just me getting mad about the old laws. But I mean, and that leads me to we got a little bug in our ear, and we heard about this, and the fact that people are going to try some in-state exchanges, and I worry about that too. Like, is there going to be the liquidity in those right away to make those work? Because those don't just it's not a one-sided transaction anymore. There needs to be liquidity on the other side. I don't fully understand their business model, but have you dove into them at all?
I have. There's going to be one starting here in New Jersey this summer. Sport Trade. They put a few cryptic tweets out there, and I've talked with them a few different times over the years here. I have high hopes for them because they're coming about it the right way. And the way they're coming about it is not like, let's just open an exchange and anybody can make markets and anybody can bet into it. That probably doesn't have the liquidity in our current state of things. However, they're going to come at it with the market makers will be these entities that feel like they can make a more efficient price than the current sports books that are out there. They're going to be finance companies, financial entities in some respect or another. And they've actually had to go through being vetted by the state in order to get a license to be able to make markets on this exchange. And that could create a lot of liquidity, create more liquidity than we even were imagining.
Sure.
And it could be very competitive on price. Now, the downside is it could be that these financial entities just kind of set up an API, a bot that has Pinnacle, and then just posts the Pinnacle price minus 1 cent.
Sure.
And basically just deals, sits back and goes, oh yeah, well, let's just let Pinnacle do the line making.
Look at us making this market.
Right. And they think like that could be a recipe for success. And
that's not like what Susquehanna does though for Betfair.
Right. So Susquehanna is kind of different. They're not one of the firms that have been mentioned in this.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So Susquehanna is kind of their own little thing. They got something going in Ireland there where they bet into the Betfair exchange, and they represent a lot of the liquidity in the Betfair exchange over in Europe. And they may get involved in this down the line. I don't know. They're not one of the names I've heard. But so here's the problem is there's 2 things that are required. If they get the liquidity into this market, well, you also need to have bettors. And you need to have bettors that can recognize that minus 104 is better than minus 110.
Of course, yeah.
And I'm not sure we got a whole lot of those yet. I'm trying to kind of make, you guys are trying,
sure,
kind of make people realize that you need to be price sensitive, that's the way to come out ahead when you can lower the VIG and, it helps you in the long run. But I think a lot of players are like, what DraftKings is giving me this boost that if Aaron Rodgers throws for 350 yards and, his team wins and, there's like lunar eclipse, I win 3 times my money.
Well, lunar eclipse is predictable, right?
Well, that's true. There's an angle there.
You can, there's actually an angle if you follow the cycles. And
Yeah.
I mean, you're right, and it makes me feel a little more hopeful, the fact that they could create the liquidity. They just need to find the market, or they need to find the customer base, and hopefully, they have a good marketing team that will be able to figure that out. Because I think this is, an exciting new product that's, not only just getting away from hopefully the European model, but completely different, not just a straight up sports book. And you say hopefully they don't just grab penny minus 1 cent. I mean, I think they probably will in some markets. Like you see, like there's exchanges that certainly will set their own exchange numbers for major sports, but then they'll borrow for some things. Like they still need to borrow. They're not going to hire traders to put up numbers for the low liquidity markets. They'll still borrow, but hopefully for the major U.S. markets, we'll see some unique lines there, especially for you. You actually live there. Like I have to get a beard.
You brought up something interesting though that I was going to ask you about later, but this is the perfect segue for it. Let's talk about the overall body of players that we have nowadays, and we can use your state of New Jersey as an example. The general, the number of players is growing. This is not, the billion-dollar handles, blah blah blah. That's not a matter of people who were usually they were booking with offshore and now they're booking onshore, or they were using a local and now they're now they're going with the DraftKings app. Like this is not what's happening. It's a lot of new players, right? And I'm guessing that your average sports bettor, like the distribution was pretty lopsided to the inexperienced recreational players before, but now it's got to be like outsized in terms of proportion, right? Is number one, is that a fair characterization? And are you getting the sense, because I think back to my experience gambling, I was betting throughout my 20s. I was small staking and I was losing. And I really never felt like I was ever going to. The offshore market was unstable enough through the 2000s that I was like, I don't even really care about getting good at this, because even if I do ever do really well someday, I could just the book could just fold, or it was much more like, I understand this is an entertainment tax. I don't really care. I hope to break even on this NFL season, and that's fine. But then once there was like kind of a stability, it could have been just because the market got stable or because I got older. I have no clue. But eventually I was like, okay, I'm done. Now I want to do better. And I want to try to move up the ladder here, because it's a zero-sum game. Ultimately, you're betting against the other bettors. Like that absolutely is the reality of the way I see things. Are you getting the sense that the population of players in a state like New Jersey that is now 3 years old, like we're starting to see like, hey, you know what? A third of them, they're done with this. They put they're spit out of the churn, as our friend HJ brought up the churn. But they've already churned out. And then there's a third of them that are they're always going to be kind of in the mix, getting just entertainment tax every season. And then there's some that are trying to improve, looking for resources that'll help them get better at this. What would you guess the proportionality is there?
I don't know if I could guess specifically what the proportions are. However, we have seen this evolution of the sports bettor. I'm going to actually go way, way back. I'm going to go to Nevada first, and I'm going to say the consumer in Nevada that's local, not the tourist,
sure,
has always been a little bit problematic for Nevada sports books. They know there's enough knowledge of how the industry works that they can't put anything up there that's too juicy, or else the sharps will just dive in and devour it. Okay. And one of the first things that people from Nevada were so shocked at was a sign-up bonus of $500. How can they do that? That's ridiculous. Because all their life they had like a $20 sign-up bonus, and they were like, "Whoa, that's so generous." So
free buffet and a cup of nickels.
Right. So then you go to New Jersey now, and we've seen that is that, okay, we got through all the sign-up bonuses and all of the recreational books and bringing in the bettors you were just describing that, are fine with entertainment tax and things like that. We're now starting to see the price-conscious consumer rise up a little bit more. And you're right, Drew. It's people that have finally said, I'm done losing at this. I can do better than this. What are some ways that I can do better? And they find your podcast or they find my YouTube videos, and they kind of learn that, okay, there are some better ways to approach all of this. And that kind of tends to lead to the price-conscious consumer. Here's the problem. In New Jersey right now, we have 22 sports books. All of them are targeting that recreational entertainment tax consumer. And guess what? DraftKings and FanDuel are eating everybody's lunch. Maybe a little bit slice goes to PointsBet, a little bit slice goes to BetMGM. But for the most part, those 17 others that are all targeting this market segment that, quite frankly, is very saturated, are just going to die on the vine. What we haven't seen is someone come along and say, okay, I'm going to deal to this different type of player, to this aspirational sharp bettor who they think they can beat this market, but truth is, no, they're probably no better than a coin flip. And they have a bankroll that, because it erodes so slowly, because they can bet, wisely, their bankroll's constantly getting bigger. And as a result, they're almost like the unlimited bankroll guy, whereas the recreational bettor is the one that gets churned up and spit out. And quite frankly, the aspirational sharp also is willing to put more money into this because they're like, oh, but I'm going to win this time. I'm good enough. I can do it this time. Or, oh, I've learned this new angle. I can get better. That's the market that seems to be the pot of gold that nobody wants to go after. And I'm quite frankly, I'm kind of confused as to why no one has stepped up and gone after that meaty middle of segment.
At least in New Jersey.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it maybe it's just because they haven't had to yet, or the churn just hasn't caught up. Like there's so many consumers to hit yet, and when you can offer bonus, again, what was your marketing? $200 billion a quarter, or whatever. Two. I mean, legitimately, hundreds of millions all the time. When you can offer all those promos again, it doesn't take work. You don't have to hire marketing people to just give money away. Like those people, I shouldn't even say that. I'm sure they work hard, but like it's got to be pretty easy to market when you just say, well, we'll just give everybody a bunch of money to sign up for our product and we win.
It seems so short-sighted.
It does. It's not short-sighted. I think if you can, like Jack said, if the other 17 die, and more of them come up and they die. Like if you can maintain this long enough to get a strong ass firm hold across a good part of the U.S. as it goes here, like you'll have such a foothold that you can switch later on to less of a more traditional marketing approach, just advertising, giving away less money like that, and you have such a brand name and such a loyal user base already. It might not matter at that point that you just pissed away $7 billion over 6 years.
Yeah, I mean, do you hear much about? I mean, has the focus shifted at all when these books are talking, revenue, talking to investors, doing their quarterly statement stuff? Has the focus at all shifting from customer acquisition to customer retention, or it's just assumed that they'll always keep coming back once they've made a count at your book?
All of them on their investor calls are now trying to get their customer acquisition costs lower and lower and lower. And the bar right now has been set by Barstool Sportsbook, and I didn't intend that pun there. But basically, they're touting that they had a customer acquisition fee that was like $111 or something like that. That's on average. They're able to get a new customer for just $111, whereas a lot of these other companies are willing to spend up to $300 per customer. And quite frankly, some of these sign-up deals are worth $400, $500. Unfortunately, many new consumers aren't bright enough to go max value on their sign-up deals. They go for the one that's you bet $1, and if somebody scores a basket in the NBA game, then you win $100, and they go, oh, that's so awesome. It's a free $100. It's a free $100, but they would have given you a free $400 had you done this other sign-up deal that had a little bit of risk to it. So are these companies switching over to saying, how do we retain these customers lifetime? How do we get their lifetime value up higher? Yes and no. Some are, and others are just saying, well, you know what? We've got them hooked in, and then when we get that iCasino, we've already acquired them. And the LTV of an iCasino player is huge. It's in the thousands. So as a result,
that's the whale analogy from last week.
Right. Well, if they can get the iCasino player for cheap, then they feel like they've won long term.
I get that. Andy has muted himself.
Sorry,
so
I was going to say, you know what has a better hold than sports betting? Craps, like on online roulette, on 000 online roulette. That was some of my favorite advertisements. Are like, oh, we have a special roulette just for March Madness. Like, no, you just superimposed a basketball court on a roulette table. Like, there's nothing special.
They're both round.
It's like, cool? we threw a 000 on it too, though, just for fun. Like, this is not a promotion. This is just an excuse to put this out there.
Yeah. I will admit that I've at some points the kind of the educating the sharp or the aspirational sharp, like, they'll make it, they'll get to the break even, I think, if they really care, if they really are putting in the time and energy and kind of, grinding like we ground, we ground for a long time. It took a long time, pay a lot of tuition. So I don't mind kind of the idea that, well, yeah, I want these players to, I want player retention. I want everybody to stay in the pools. I want the pools to grow. I ultimately look at the betting handle versus, the hold and think, screw the hold percentage. Like, you do not want a high hold percentage. Like, focus everything on the betting handle, like, do whatever you can do to grow that side of it, because that's your long-term, stable footing. The hold percentage is just, the higher that goes, it's correlated with churn. Like, you want to bleed people faster? Fine. Like, that's silly though. Like, that's ridiculous. And maybe just because of the sort of the cyclic nature of, like, football season seems to drive most of the betting activity of the US, maybe it's not that risky, but I just feel like it's a lot of this is, like, really short-sighted, and they may be kind of increasing their long-term risk of retaining these players. And I guess in this context, can you see a day where we wake up and you're like, oh my gosh, FanDuel and DraftKings are dueling to see who can go lower on VIG? FanDuel just tick to 104. Is DraftKings going to stay at 105, or are they going to go to 104? I mean, like, is that, like, potentially 10 years down the road where, like, in reality, like, the handle becomes king?
Wow. I hope so, Drew. Like, that. See, that sounds like an awesome place.
In a dystopian future. Yeah, that's like it's like a movie. Yeah,
it is. I've talked to enough senior management at some of these sports books, and they all like to kind of say what they know I want to hear, and they know I want to hear that. And they're like, Jack, look, we can get there. We can get to minus 105 on NFL game day. We can get to VIG free on NFL game days. You can kind of guess which sports book that is. But the point of it is like saying it and actually doing it. And then when they don't do it, they come back to me and they go, Jack, we just don't think there's a market there. We don't think the consumer recognizes this. They don't know. They want the boost. They want the promos. We're going to spend our money on that rather than spend our money on, encouraging more handle.
Of course, yeah.
It's unfortunate. Maybe we'll get to that point. I think we've still got a couple years to go, and we've got to get all these states kind of working in the same way. For instance, if you are, if you're Andy and your state doesn't have it, but Iowa does, well, when Minnesota does get it, Iowa is going to be much more competitive. That's just the nature of how these things work. They're going to get boosted.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. It's the competition, and that's why I think actually Arizona is such an interesting case. Las Vegas is going to feel the heat from Arizona. You can drive down across the Hoover Dam from Vegas, and now suddenly you're playing with DraftKings, FanDuel, PointsBet, all the big names, BetMGM, blah, 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 that are all in Arizona, free and clear with mobile sign-up and mobile banking and all this stuff. And trust me, the Dam is going to be crowded on NFL Sundays. And Vegas is going to feel that. So that's going to drive Nevada to kind of step up the game. And now Nevada, like I said, is going to be a little more price conscious as their way approaching it, because I think the bonuses are going to get eaten alive out there too fast. So I could see the evolution coming to that one day, Drew, and I would love to be there for it. Okay,
but for now, at least, there is still a lottery mentality towards this stuff.
Yeah,
right.
Big time.
We're catering to the $5, $10 players, and we're just trying to get them to play the 100-to-1, whatever. And that's just the way it is for now.
Oh, yeah, the big same game parlay thing, that stuff. Yeah.
Well, and the implications of the psychological warfare and just again, we go back to this constantly, the cognitive biases that surround some of these things. I had someone reach out and I've had numerous people reach out just describing how good some of these legal books are. They let you just cash out when your bet's almost going to win. If you win a couple legs of a parlay, you just hit cash out. That's got to be a huge advantage for us. I'm yeah, I feel like they might know the math on that. You're probably taking it in the rear. But several people have said that to me, what an advantage to the player the cash out button is. It's like insurance and blackjack. If the house offers it to you, it's usually not so hot. So, the fact that all these bells and whistles that they throw on there, they make people feel like this is a bonus for me. This is an advantage. This is not a hindrance to me. I'm not slowly bleeding EV by doing this. And if they can, outside of just the sign up bonuses and stuff like that, and the ones where it feels like, oh, this is a free bet. It's the Lakers plus for how much money we take, we add a point. So now it's Lakers plus 75. They just got to stay within 75 tonight. All those things feel so free, but it's in the long run, it's going to be a hindrance on your money, a hindrance on your bankroll. You're slowly bleeding, and you end up in. It's weird. If you end up in either edge case where you get the shit kicked out of you so hard, a lot of them, like you said, the churn, they give up, they just don't bet anymore. Or if you accidentally win a couple of long shots early on, you might just get your account shut off, even if you're a really bad gambler. You can end up being done both ways. You almost want to be in the middle.
Yeah, well, I guess before moving off of this general topic into the state of content, which is maybe more interesting conversation, especially considering the last couple, the current news cycle, I guess we're still in. What are sort of the 3 or 4 most important points that you think clearly communicated to the guy that's been doing it now for 2 NFL seasons, coming into season 3, and is like, I'm not losing this year. I'm gonna finally break even. I'm gonna win some money this year. What do you think the handful of clear, easy to communicate messages are to that guy to keep him around for another NFL season?
Rule number 1 is you can't beat the NFL on game day. Period. You can't wake up at 10 a.m. and figure out who you're betting that day and win. You just can't. The market is too efficient. Secondly, go ahead and look at everything but the spread, and maybe even don't look at the total. Look at all the other stuff, because these books have a high tolerance for all the other nuanced betting of alt lines and props and other derivatives and halves and quarters. They have a higher tolerance for the NFL for that stuff than any other sport that I've ever seen. So if you have that available to you, go ahead and look at it. Go ahead and try to specialize on props in those sports. Look, if you're just betting props, you're going to get limited. Books don't like that. Books kind of view props as the amenity to get you in the door. So if you're just betting props normally on most sports, you're going to get limited down. But in the NFL, for some reason, they're willing to say, oh, you know what? Okay, go ahead. We'll we'll give you a 500, 1,000 pop on these props, no problem. And I'm talking about legal books. I know offshore they trim you down on props pretty quick. And then a third point is, I would say, be careful who you listen to, because nobody really has that strong of an edge on the NFL. So if you find yourself a guru that you think you can tail, and I think everyone's smart enough not to pay for their picks, but if you find yourself a guru that you feel like you can listen to and they'll guide you through the wilderness, you're probably you're no better than a coin flipper with people you follow, because you're not going to get their price, or you're not going to get their information is going to be stale by the time you hear it, or they might not have an edge at all. The NFL is really tough. You know, if I had one piece of advice to someone who wanted to bet the NFL, it would be find something else. You know, WNBA, man, that's a real soft market. You know, yeah, you might not want to brag to your friends that you're a big fan of women's basketball, but it pays the bills, and there's no style points awarded here. However you make the money is how you make the money. So don't worry that you're betting the WNBA versus, you know, the big bad NFL.
NFL's fun though.
Oh, sure, I bet it, and I have no edge on it.
And yeah, that's the thing too. You're never going to tell someone like, don't bet the NFL on game day because you can't win. But maybe you can convince them, don't bet serious amounts on the NFL on game day. Like,
sure.
Like if you're going to take the attitude that it's recreational, then you need to take the attitude that it's recreational with your stakes as well. Like, yeah. Unless it's absolutely disposable income that you were going to burn in a fire anyway, just, you know, feel free. But like, if you're going to treat it, it's, you know, the European model comes over, but we don't bet like Europeans. You know, that like the average bet size over there is so much smaller. And that's why it's fine, because, you know, they like, it's legitimate. It's their favorite team, their favorite soccer team, football team is on it, and I'm going to put $2 on them, and that, you know, that's just like, it's normal over there. Where I don't know if just our adrenaline junkie, you know, needing that dopamine hit, we need to put a lot more money on it to make it feel like we have skin in the game. But like they seem to be fine with that, and I think a lot of people get past that, where it's like, I got to put a lot of money on it. It's like, but I mean, if you're going to lose, wouldn't you rather at the end of the day have put a little money on it, still had some fun? Like, it could still be fun. And yeah, I think maybe if you can convince someone of that, that'd be a plus positive in the overall community. It's just, that's a hard conversation to have.
Yeah. Okay. So basically, find your niche is an important rule. Then shop around for price still works for those markets, especially if you're gonna bet derivatives. You can definitely catch an edge still. If you have books at 5-10 places, you're gonna get the best price. Yeah, downsize your staking. Don't bet on game day. Those are all good. Definitely, yeah. Don't bet on the Sunday Night Football or Monday Night Football just because it's the only game on. That was a fun one.
Unless it's halftime.
Unless it's halftime, yeah. In which case you might have some advantage.
I could see maybe if you could find some edge there. Like, don't bet on every halftime just because.
And hey, you guys were fire this year on those halftime shows, man. You guys, there were a couple times that I go, yeah, you know what, they're right.
We're a little streaky. Yeah, we did find our groove though for like the whole second half of the season. We were in a nice groove. All right, well, let's talk a little bit about content. In the same sense that the kind of the marketplace and the states and everything are kind of going through some growing pains, as you would expect for a relatively young industry, I think you can say a lot of the same things about the quality of content that exists around sports betting. In fact, it's kind of funny that, and, you know, I am not the right person to really have solid perspective on this because I am so in the gambling bubble that I really just don't consume any sports stuff outside of it. But I feel like there's a pretty clear shift in terms of what people are consuming. And, you know, once you become kind of interested in gambling, that's the sports content you want, not just the basic Skip Bayless hot take nonsense. That's not going to help you win. And so there is an enormous economy around providing information that people who are going to bet on sports are interested in consuming. And when all of a sudden this was, you know, legal 3 years ago, there was a pretty decent vacuum. There was really not a lot of stuff that I would say was worth quality stuff that was worth consuming. In fact, we started this podcast in the first place because we were like, man, I'm tired of listening to Cousin Sal and Bill Simmons, who sound like they don't even really talk about betting. Like, it's bullshit. Like, I want to hear someone talking about this who's actually at least doing it. I don't care if they win or lose. I just want to hear somebody talking about who's actually betting.
There's a new thumb on the block.
Is there?
Remember the thumb tweet, the Cousin Sal thumb tweet. Still But no, and truthfully, it was like, it was such a revelation. We're not telling everyone to start a podcast. You shouldn't, because we don't need the competition. But like the just sitting and like having I don't understand how somebody could possibly do this, but like having the skin in the game, having to like say it out loud, but like, I'm betting this team for reasons X, Y, and Z, having to like put it out there. It felt like, well, I need to get better at this. And
of course.
And then just talking back and forth, we got better. And
no doubt about it.
And then, but the shift from then to now has been wild, especially just like people putting out basically anything. Like the stuff that's come out lately has been just, it's felt like, let's just slap a couple people together. I'm sure this will work. Let's get a pretty girl. Let's get some fancy graphics.
This feels targeted. No, I didn't sign up for this.
I would have said a pretty boy, like with the hair. No, but I mean, no, you do fine. I think you do good work. But I mean, there are some where it's just like, what were they even thinking when they put this together? Because they don't know what they don't know what they're talking about. They making. And I feel for some of these talents, it's like they're making them talk about sports they have known nothing about because they know about a different sport. It's like, I don't think there's a lot of thought process that goes into this. And then obviously a lot of it doesn't get real deep into any sort of, helping you. It's just, this is what we want to bet today. So I mean, the question, I don't know what question Drew was getting at, but like, I would guess, where would you hope content goes? And I'm going to take notes.
I think we know. Unabated, obviously.
Yeah.
Jack's gonna tell us specifically, I think, what his vision of kind of the helpful content is, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, you know what? Let me start without my own personal involvement in it. I felt the same way. And a year ago when I was on with you guys, I was just getting started putting out some YouTube content. And I probably mentioned that YouTube was like this wasteland when it came to sports betting content, even worse than what we've seen elsewhere. Like, it was just all scam all the time. There were very few people that were trying to educate. They were all trying to get you to sign up for something or do something for them or whatnot.
Yeah.
And so that's why I came across YouTube and decided, okay, I'll just do a live stream and I'll try to put together a PowerPoint presentation and just go from there. And I think sports betting content has evolved in the past 3 years. But is there enough content to fill an entire network with it? I'm not sure. Like, that's what we've seen being attempted with a lot of these companies, is they're trying to fill almost 24 hours of content. That's really tough. Look, I spend just about 24 hours a day on Twitter, gambling Twitter. So therefore, there probably is enough content going on in the world that could justify it. But some of these people, like, that's a real stretch to have them talk intelligently about something different every single day. It just doesn't work that well for them. So I think what we've seen with content is they want it to drive traffic. And I'm not as opposed to that as I once was, because some of the content's getting really good in terms of giving the user a full picture of what's going on and then driving the traffic. There was a time when content was sort of like, we're going to drive traffic and get them to do something for us because this reaches our end goal of affiliate income or whatnot. And the example I always used to use is the Action Network had a show called the 9-Team Parlay, in which they would build a 9-team parlay and encourage you to go bet this, follow them with this 9-team parlay. We could all root along for our 9-team parlay to make us all millionaires. And they never once hit a 9-team parlay in the history of the show. And I think they later realized it was just kind of like a dumb idea.
Shocking.
It was a little too transparent into what they were trying to make you do.
That's just because they didn't get to 90,000 shows. Once they got to 90,000, they would have hit one.
Right.
Yeah,
They just quit too soon. They just quit too soon.
Maybe that's my next. Maybe we do the 18 team parlay and then we sell for 480 million.
I'm going to do the 7-team parlay.
Oh, 17. There you go. Just one underneath. Yeah, just one a day.
So anyway, we haven't seen as much of that lately, and that's good. I think we're starting to mature. We're starting to realize that the consumer is not the idiot that some of these people thought they were in terms of just following blindly into the buzzsaw. So now, how did I get involved in the content? Well, I had the YouTube channel, and I had been talking with Rufus Peabody a lot about where the industry was going, and we felt like we needed to give the consumer a voice, an upper hand, and we formed that American Bettors Coalition about a year ago now. And we were working towards that, and we actually had some discussions on funding, and what it came down to is there wasn't going to be funding for us. Casinos weren't going to support us as the voice of the consumer. The consumers weren't really going to support us. And we kind of realized, like, if we don't have funding and we're also in the middle of this pandemic, we don't know where sports are going, like this probably isn't going to have legs. And you really need business people to run a business. Just a guy, 2 professional bettors don't really make for a strong company. So fast forward a few months and Rufus and I are talking again. And he's like, I want to give people my tools.
Sure.
I want to give them the tools I use to find derivative pricing, the tools I use to find closing line value, the tools I use to run NFL simulations that favor the New York Jets over all other teams. No,
sure.
But he's like, I want to do this, and I was like, well, I want to give people education. I want to give people content that steers them the right way, free of affiliate marketing, and can teach them. And I said, I can't really teach on YouTube like courses. And I was talking about, maybe I would, they have these course software like Udemy and other Skillshare and things like that, but they don't like you putting gambling content on there. So they were kind of ruled out. I said, what if we could create a network, a platform where we have your tools and we have my content, and maybe you have my content using your tools, to create this sports betting education. And that's how we kind of evolved into Unabated. And we got some business people behind us, and we got some engineers behind us. We got data scientists behind us. So it's not just 2 professional gamblers who are, spinning up this thing and hoping like people throw money at us, because we realize people aren't going to throw money at us. A large part of our site is going to be free. A large part of our site is going to be just the content that we feel needs to be out there. And it's coming along, and we'd hope to be launching right about now, but we're going to be launching this summer. We're going to be into beta testing shortly here. We've been a little bit secretive on what we're going to have. Like, for instance, tonight we unveiled that we're going to have an NFL simulator, because now the schedule's out. So you can enter in your power ratings. You can tweak all of the settings you want to tweak versus the starting QB and the backup QB, and how relatively strong they are, and the probability of injury, and the home field advantage might vary team to team, and the defensive efficiency. And you can tweak all those settings and come up with these power ratings, and then run it through 10,000 times, and we'll spit out to you what the odds are on various futures markets with live lines, as who's going to win the division, regular season wins, who's going to win the conference, who's going to win the Super Bowl, all based on the results of your simulation.
So now when you're like, my numbers, you're not bullshitting.
Right. And exactly. And people are going to be able to use this to kind of learn about the numbers. So a lot of people do that. They kind of come up with their own numbers, but they don't really have anything behind them. We're going to help you kind of create your numbers and then do all the simulations to kind of refine your numbers so that you can come up with it. And then we're going to caution you and say, hey, guess what? You don't have a 40% edge. You entered something wrong here. You're kind of reading too much into this situation.
Are you manually going to regress the market, though?
No, we're going to let the user see their lines compared to the rest of the market. And then that's the next step. The educational piece is where we kind of go through, here's what your numbers really mean. here's what your practical edge could be in this scenario, not necessarily, because what's going to happen is people will fit their model to fit their narrative. In other words, they're going to ramp something up much higher than it should ever be because they want to say, but the Arizona Cardinals are the best team in the league, and ramp it up and then go, oh, look, I can bet them to win the Super Bowl with a huge edge. We don't want them to kind of justify bad betting behavior.
Sure.
But
I like that how you said it would warn you, hey, you don't have a 40% edge on this, because that's what I've seen a lot with what was the action product that a lot of people use, the Bet Labs.
The trend, basically like build a set of rules that gives
not
you
a
70% win hit rate.
It was a cool idea. It was actually executed pretty well. Like, it was a decent platform. Slick platform, but you can't control the user, what the users do, and every single user just overfit stuff. They would overfit stuff until they found like some weird, oh man, if the wind is over 21.2 and the total is in between these two numbers, it doesn't take like 8 inputs to overfit. You can just get some real tight numbers, and all of a sudden you've created like, oh, this has hit 70% in the past. It's never going to happen. Like, you've just overfit a model. So I like where your head's at there as far as, hey, you did an oopsie. You're so far off the market on a couple teams. Maybe you should go take a look at this.
Yeah. One of the ideas we had is we'll have like an emoji of Captain Jack, but my face in the hat and the uniform, and kind of pop up. There's been so many different ideas that we've kind of just thrown around, and I think some of our engineers are like, really,
the best advice I can possibly give you is, it doesn't have to be perfect.
The Cardinals aren't going to win the Super Bowl.
It doesn't have to be perfect on version 1. In the same exact way as I'm not going to sit down and build the right model and try one. It's going to take a little bit of figuring things out, getting feedback from what people want. And definitely, it sounds cool. It sounds like a positive contribution to the space. And I wouldn't lose hope if it's not a smash out of the gate, just because, it takes a while to figure out exactly the right way to communicate with people. Speaking of which,
I hadn't caught that announcement yet. Like, people are going to have fun with that.
Yeah, that's very cool. I've a million years ago, I was like, hey, anyone want my simulation code for MATLAB? You can put in your own power numbers and it'll spit out all the probabilities. And I think I got 1 DM. And I was like, and then I tweeted like, hey, this is my pick for this game, and I get 500 likes. And it's like, you guys, come on. But that's okay. The interesting question I have for you now, and it's been a tough week. It's been a tough 2 weeks, been a tough 3 weeks for a lot of our like hardcore advantage player friends. The news cycle has been pretty rough. There's not been a lot of good news. A lot of money is being handed over from sportsbook operators to actors in the space that haven't always been who our advantage player friends would say would deserve it, for lack of a better word. Similarly, there's been really, you were notably not happy about the likes of DraftKings buying VSiN. And, while I was dead middle of the road there, because there are some great people that work there behind the scenes who I'm like, they have job security now. This is sweet. Like, great for them. But at the same time, like, I guess this is the direction that they're going to go content wise. Is not great for us, but that's fine. I think but I still, like, even in the face of all of this relatively tough news to swallow, if you have a pulse, if you know what's going on, it does feel like the scam level is falling fast, right? Like the blowback, and again, this could just be how I curate my own content, but like the blowback of ESPN hiring Kelly in Vegas was so violent, and it was so poorly received by our community that it was like, okay, well, I have a tough time thinking that whoever, signed off on that at ESPN didn't at least catch wind of that sort of stuff. And that ultimately, like, like just in general, the public opinion is not being lost on some of the decision makers, at the top of these media companies and at the, at the sports books themselves. And that like the learning curve is steep, that, they're going to eventually, what's going to work, what's going to draw audience, what's going to, be accepted and, last long term. Like it's going to have to be good because the competition is coming quick. And, there's just a lot of people who are, determined to, weed out the bad actors in this space. Do you get the same sort of sense? And because you brought up the YouTube, launch, you did a year ago, like, are we abating, for no pun intended, are we abating the scammer artists here, or is it same as it ever was? I just happen to curate my content to be blind to it.
Look, I think I more than anyone else can say that I tend to like get a hot take, tweet it out, and then go, I probably shouldn't have said it that way. Because look, I used to really like VSiN. I didn't like all their shows, but I really liked Gil's show, and I liked some of the people they would have on there. And so when I saw that news come down, and everyone knew that VSiN was for sale, like they needed to sell in order to kind of stay afloat. And it was DraftKings of all people. I was just like, damn it, and I had that visceral reaction and canceled my membership. And and later on that day, I was like, that wasn't fair to guys like Gil, who now have a really good setup there and are so good on that, that network and have that good platform. And I should have taken a wait and see approach. So that's how I've kind of been approaching things since then. Is I got to take a wait and see approach. We have not seen anyone rise up as like an out and out scam. I think there's enough public perception as to, we got you. We know what's going on. We can see through it. Mm-hmm. There's no Steve Stevens pushing through onto network television. He did have a show on CNBC like a decade ago. So it's not unheard of that could happen.
Clay Travis.
Well, all right. Well,
yeah, Fox fucking News, man.
I mean, the relationship.
That was of all the bad news that came across. That was one that hit me the hardest. Other people I know were more upset about it.
Eventually, the virus will be completely done, and I don't know what he'll talk about anymore because you can't talk about.
He'll claim victory, and stupidly people will all blind. Fuck this! The virus is gone 3 years later. Like what the fuck?
I will say too, VSiN for many years was for sale. And then we hosted a couple days.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Correlation, causation, I don't know which, but either way, we did a little hosting. All of a sudden, DraftKings like, this is a hell of a price.
Yeah, that's right. It was a team effort. It was a team effort, guys. Good job.
We did it.
And a scam has.
You're welcome, Brian.
Yeah. A scam hasn't risen to the top yet, but wait and just see what me and Andy have planned. Ultimately, when we finally take over, we're going to rug the whole industry. We can't wait.
Well, that's the point I always make to people. Like they think that I'm in this unabated is going to be some kind of money grab. Look, if I wanted to scam you, I could have scammed you already.
You could be doing it if you wouldn't know. It could be some anonymous account that has, you could be incarcerated Bob for all I can tell you.
Right. So, I mean, like if I really wanted to scam you, I would have come at this. If I wanted to scam you, I'm really late to the party because I could have been ahead of the curve on the scams.
Could have been touting 10 years.
Yeah. All right. Well, I mean, I don't know. I guess just back to the main question, though. Do you think the scam meter is on the decline? Like, are we trending in the right direction at least?
I think we are. I'll say this about Clay Travis is I think there are some people who feel or who know that politics actually does play. I had a discussion with David Purdom years ago in which he was like, I'll never tweet anything close to political because that's just a big no-no. And I was like, that's a good idea. I'll never do that either. But there's people that realize that you do want to tweet political things because that you automatically have 50% of the audience that is like, yes, I'm behind this guy. And the other 50% going, oh, this guy's awful. But they're both talking about you.
Sure. Yeah.
They're
Howard Stern effect. Yeah.
Oh, I'm going to angrily quote tweet him. I'm going to quote tweet him so that'll
look
show
how
him.
Stupid this guy is.
Look
how smart this guy is.
I'm going to give him so many impressions. I'm so mad. Yeah.
Right. So Clay Travis realized that. Darren Rovell uses that sometimes. He even said it recently. He's like, I want people to either like me or hate me, whatever. So look, I don't like that sort of journalism or that approach to things. I know I'm not going to be liked by everybody, but I'm not going to go out of my way to say outrageous things just to have one half like me and the other half, quote, tweet, hate me. So, yeah.
Sure. Okay. What do you think, Andy? Is the scam meter going down, trending down?
I think people are getting a little smarter when it comes to that, just because they know, people can tell when, some people are really full of shit. It used to be harder to tell, I think. I don't know. I feel like people are getting a little smarter. Maybe they're not getting to be better bettors, but they're getting to be better at sniffing out that horse shit. Because there's been really, years ago, there was some stuff. It's like, oh my God, this is a straight up scam. Like, this guy will just take your money. And now it's more bad actors without even them knowing that. I think a lot of these bad actors don't even know they're bad actors. They're just like, I'm excited I'm in the industry and look at me, I'm on TV now. And it's like, oh yeah, you're reading scripts and you don't know that you're shoveling shit into people's mouths, and such is life. That's the way in every industry. It's going to happen. So hopefully we get more good content, and I'll try. I mean, you guys tell me a show, I'll make a show.
Like that viral clip a couple weeks ago of the guy that was like, you're going to say that you wanted him to be knocked out, but he didn't know what the price was. Don't worry about the price.
Sure.
That's, look, these guys aren't bad actors. You're right. They're just poor content providers. And
that was expected. Everyone saw this coming. The transition of fantasy people into gambling people, the crossover, and granted, you don't have to be an experienced bettor to know when someone's full of shit, whether they're actually betting or not. It is so transparent. It's outrageous. But the for sure, the mainstream media crossover attempts have been awful, but that was expected. That's not even really what I'm thinking of. I'm more of like if people still giving Vegas Dave money for picks. That's the whole thing.
There's always the real low end of the spectrum. They'll pay for stuff like that.
Yeah. And then other people, I don't necessarily want to call out a colleague, but there is a guy who's relatively sharp who works for NBC Sports in the NFL market, still selling picks. What the hell? Maybe at some point, that stops, the longer we go here. But if it's, an easy cash grab, it's something that will always be part of the industry. It's tough for me to really tell. But I would ultimately expect that the consciousness around it and then the transparency, when we started this, Andy, we were both anonymous people, totally anonymous. Captain Jack, you were anonymous as well until you started doing content, right, and putting your face out there. This is, nowadays, to have credibility, you've got to be transparent about who you are, what you're doing. The authenticity matters all of a sudden, which is great and hugely important, I think, ultimately. So I guess one quick final question, and it involves Barstool. How long is that going to last?
Are we talking the sports book, the absolute numbers they did, or the overall brand?
I think the
cult of personality surrounding.
Yeah, the cult of personality, I guess, because it was a pretty violent pivot this season in the NFL from Big Cat, who we're good friends with, extremely, extremely nice guy. Wish nothing but the best for him. But a violent pivot from, hey, can't lose parlay, these are so fun, bet with me, to I can't win with these. You know that, real like kind of like, I'm the world's worst gambler. Like, don't tail me on this stuff. By the way, like, it's fun. Here's some Barstool Sports stuff. Like,
I respected the transparency. Like, he's just started like, this isn't going to win. Like, he started putting the wording in like, there's a chance that this loses parlay and stuff like that. It's shtick. It's fun.
Of course, shtick is fun.
Those are the kind of people that want to have the fun.
It's a whole sideshow, parallel street entertainment here. But like, the people who are actually betting in that space in the 20% hold, like, I mean, the churn, talk about churn. Does that just continue to exist? And that's just like, hey, these are 20-year-olds that have their parents' money and they're just going to keep throwing it into the fire and they're having fun. So who gives a shit? Like, same kind of nonsense that's going on with like the Dogecoin and Wall Street bets and all that stuff. Like, it's just young people who don't really care. They're just doing it for the LOLs. Like, or do you think that ultimately like that well is going to run dry and it's going to prove to be a model that is unsustainable?
Well, I think cult of personality is the perfect term for it. Do you guys remember that the Action Network originally tried to be Barstool? And it wasn't until they were acquired by the Churning Group, which also had Barstool, that they were like, oh, this clashes. Let's make Tan to be this and Barstool to be this. But remember, Action Network originally had kind of the same people. A lot of them have switched between companies, and they were all about the wacky things.
Oh, sure. I do remember this. Yeah. The Paul LeDuc, Blackjack Fletcher era. Yeah.
Blackjack Fletcher.
Yeah.
And Ravel does a very poor Portnoy impression. Like, it's not the same.
He's on the other end of the spectrum of like.
So there is room in this big world of sports betting for this type of entertainment. And Portnoy is Howard Stern of this generation. No doubt about it. Well, what happened to Howard Stern? Look, I grew up a huge Howard Stern fan. From when I was 10 years old on, Howard
still
Stern
does
was on
amazing
the radio.
interviews, by the way.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So, but I saw Howard Stern evolve over time. And it was originally the crass lesbians and dwarfs and drunks and whatever. And then, when he got to Sirius and started to get the big money, he started to get a little bit more legitimized. And then he wanted to be friends with Hollywood. He wanted that adoration from Hollywood. So he kind of became this great interviewer and this friend of Jimmy Kimmel and this sort of thing. And that's around the time that Howard Stern sort of lost some of his significance in the world. I don't listen to the show anymore, mainly because I don't have Sirius anymore. But I kind of feel like there's going to be a similar arc with Barstool, and it just plays out in different media. So whereas Stern was radio, satellite radio, somewhat video and streaming, Barstool has now been internet media, sportsbook media, sports betting platform, that sort of thing. And they're going to follow a similar arc based on how Portnoy goes. If Portnoy decides he wants to be something different, then Barstool's going to just follow him down whatever path it goes down. I have no problems with Barstool. I think they've evolved in some ways. Like, I remember a time a couple years ago when their big thing would be like, they're watching a college game and they're like, kill that guy. Oh, we got to send death threats to that guy. Blah, blah. And then people started to do that. They started to do death threats to players. And I think Barstool realized quickly, oh, wait, we have a little too much control here. We can't be advocating this sort of thing.
You can't send the mob after people like that. And it was wild. Some of the stuff. I think of that poor kid that came out and yelled at Portnoy about filming the pizza review. And then that place got like 8,000 one-star Yelp reviews in like an hour or something. It's, it became a very important, social.
Wielding the power of the mob is dangerous as shit.
That was scary. Yeah. It's like, oh man, also that guy shouldn't have done that. But the reaction was visceral and wild and instant. It was crazy. Like they swing a big dick all of a sudden. It was nuts.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think that's fair. And goddamn, the Wizards blowing this lead is killing me.
I'm watching this too. And when you canceled Sirius, did you write them a mean letter too? I had to jab it. I was thinking about that for a few.
and then post it on my Twitter account.
I'm gonna give you shit about that for years. But no, it's wild. The things that we talked about this year, I wouldn't have thought we'd been talking about it at this point last year.
I do have one last content question for you, and then we'll wrap and let you go. We're very appreciative of all the time you've given us here. Where is the current vacuum in sports betting media landscape for you as a consumer of sports betting entertainment stuff, or just in general, like your peers, your community, people that you talk to, like they're like, man, like why isn't there one like a show like this for us? You know, like where's the current vacuum? Because right now we're engaged in it. You know, a lot of other people are engaged in it. Like we're just all kind of producing the same sort of content. Like it's like, here's the games today. Here's what matters. Here's what I bet. You know, like it's pretty formulaic to a degree. There's got to be something that's not being addressed that people want to hear out there. And I would love to be the stake some ground there. Not that I have a lick of time for it, but I could find some smart, talented people who could do it. But yeah, like what, like, yeah, Andy, you're the director of content for crying out loud at BETSPERTS. Like,
I'm taking notes. Fill me in.
What is the vacuum content wise that needs to be and speaking of original, we'll give Andy a little plug here. Like you're approaching the green, like preview of the golf tournaments while playing like the video game on Twitch. Like that's freaking novel. That's really novel, and it's really original. Are there a couple other things like that off the top of your head that you think the market is missing right now?
All right, I got two ideas that I don't see a lot of. The first, and you guys touch on it sometimes. Your episode last week, last Wednesday, was a good example of the art of sports betting.
Sure. Nobody
talks about the art of sports betting because it's not. You can't talk art. Like it's nuanced, and it's very tough to communicate that. But when you do, when you come up with these topics that are about how not all sharps are the same, and sharp betting is not all about just finding the best number and hammering it. That's an evergreen topic that people really like to absorb, and it kind of gives them a peek as to how it actually all works. The other topic I'll tell you is we have not seen proper sports betting zeitgeist yet, and by that I mean it kind of explaining to users or letting users kind of come along as to what it really is like to be a professional gambler or a professional sports bettor or a high stakes sports bettor. You know, look, you watch the Kentucky Derby. NBC had it written into their contract that they're going to have Mattress Mac on, and he's going to place this big wager at this exact time. It was on the timeline for the network. He's going to place the big wager right now. And they thought that was going to be exciting. Well, Mattress Mac is about as exciting as like the back of my shed out back. You know, he's not a very dynamic guy, and basically he just took a brick of money and put it on the counter and was like, you like that? We need to kind of get into it where it's not fantastical, it's not for show, it's really how it's done. You know, wouldn't you like to see Rufus going through his numbers and betting his golf tournament and that sort of thing? Wouldn't you like to see Abnormally Distributed kind of just firing away about NASCAR and things like that? Like these guys are on another level above where everybody else is right now. Sure. And wouldn't it be exciting to see them work or see how it's really done? Some of those guys don't want to show you how it's done, rightfully so. But I think there's a lot of people that would learn a lot about the process if we could actually see the process in the works. And we don't even have to see it live real time. We could see it like a week later. It would still be fascinating to kind of watch it all happen.
I do these NBC video clips for NBA every night. I record them at like midnight, 1 o'clock Eastern once lines are up. And like the 30 minutes before where I'm just fucking around, like going through results and, you know, updating my model and stuff, I was like, I should just Twitch stream this. And I got so close, but I was like, I don't have the energy at that time of night to like really put it out there. But next season, I think I got to do it. Or maybe the playoffs.
That would be a good NBA show. I was joking about that too. You know, we all made that case like, let's watch a pro better bet. And, you know, Rufus came up a couple times. I'm like, you know, it'd been funny to watch Rufus at the whatever World Series of sports betting.
DraftKings, yeah.
Where he had just his heart ripped out at the end. Like, as bad as I feel about that, like, that would have been good content. That's the Ravel tweet. Like, I feel bad for our country,
bad
but
for Rufus,
this is tremendous content.
Yeah, right. What was the other avenue that you think is poorly served?
Well, that was the second one. The first one was the art of sports betting. In the chat, Kyle says Captain Jack clearly owns Life on the Line on DVD. I do. I also have seen the best of it. I think they were both poorly done documentaries. I think there's so much better that can be done of real sports bettors. The trouble is, real sports bettors don't want to be on camera. They don't want to get exposed as to what they're really doing. You get the guys that are on camera are the guys like, you know, Alan Boston and Teddy Covers and guys like that are, you know, they kind of like that whole personality thing. Don't follow me. Follow somebody that, like, I can give you a list of guys that are really making major shit money at this stuff, but they never want to be on camera. So it's.
Yeah, we've asked a couple of them. I mean, that's the correct answer. They don't. Like,
we got
playing.
Spoon.
Yeah, they're playing. We did get Spoon. Yeah. I mean, Spoon has his own mini series of how to make money. Though those are we both came up in one episode. That was the highlight of my career coming up.
I can't wait for season 2. Spoon says.
So,
yeah.
No, but
I think I came up in an episode or two, but not enough favorable. But I've known Spoon for years and years. I've known him for 15, 20 years. So.
I'm gonna watch those again before I go to bed tonight. I think those are what put me to sleep. Spoon. I watch those every night. I watch them with breakfast. But this was a great past anniversary, I think.
Yeah, happy anniversary.
This turned out good again. I'd forgotten it. It sneaks up on us every year. I didn't get you guys anything, but we'll reconvene again, and we'll get back at it, and hopefully when we touch base again, or when hopefully before that, we find a few more states making the right calls, a few of these states that have made the wrong calls, maybe call it an audible, switching from the monopoly to the, you know, it doesn't have to be full New Jersey 25 operators, but, you know, the Montana thing, probably not going to be long-term good.
No, not at all. And I think the third anniversary gift is tweet. I think paper and then wood and tweet. So we'll just give each other a tweet.
Very good. Very good. All right. Well, take care. Best of luck. Congratulations and good luck on the launch of Unabated. And look forward to talking to you again soon. Hopefully it's not a year from now, but really appreciate all your time and keep up the good work.
Thanks, guys. Always enjoyable.
All right. Bye-bye. Bitcoin bounced a little bit, but we're still below 50 here.
Just check it in the morning. That's what I do.
Man, we got down to 46.3.
If you don't think you'll respect me in the morning, we can sleep till afternoon.
I had some bids at 47. 47.5 get filled.
What do you think about changing the music? Because YouTube doesn't like this song now.
I guess we should change it.
Yeah. I should tell Jack that this song was taken from like